If you think the only real difference between a propeller plane and a jet is just, going faster, you're missing the biggest part of the story. See, transitioning to a jet isn't just about pushing a throttle forward. It's about learning a completely different way to think about flying.
So let me ask you, is a jet really just a prop plane with a bigger engine? If that's what you're thinking, well, you're in for a couple of big surprises. The reality is way more complex, and honestly, it's a lot more interesting.
All right, let's just lay out the core differences right here. In a prop plane, power is immediate. You push the throttle, it goes. Slowing down? Easy. That propeller acts like a giant air brake. But in a jet, it's the total opposite. Power has a lag, its super sleek design makes slowing down a massive headache, and you can't just power your way out of a tight spot. This isn't just a different airplane, it's a whole different philosophy of flying.
And get this, these huge differences are there before you even start moving. On the ground, a jet is kind of like a silent predator, with dangers you can't even see.
With a propeller plane, it's pretty hard to miss when the engine's on, right? You've got that huge spinning disk of doom right up front. But a jet can be sitting there at idle power, looking totally quiet and still. But even at idle, that intake is a lethal vacuum, and the exhaust is a superheated hurricane that can launch gear and people across the ramp.
Okay, so let's line up on the runway. You'd think this is where the jet's awesome power really kicks in, but the very first thing a new jet pilot learns is something that feels totally wrong. Jets are actually kind of slow to get going.
And this right here, this is the absolute heart of flying a jet. A piston engine in a prop plane responds in a split second. A jet engine? Not so much. As a jet pilot, you can't just react to what's happening now. You have to be flying ahead of the plane, thinking about what it's going to need seconds or even minutes from now.
And here's why. The way a jet engine builds power is completely nonlinear. I mean, look at this. At 70% RPM, you're getting almost no real push. Almost all of the engine's thrust lives in that top 15 or 20% of its RPM range. A tiny little nudge on the thrust levers up high does way more than a big shove down low.
And this is the real kicker. Spooling up from idle to takeoff power isn't instant. It can take up to 10 seconds. Now, just imagine for a second you're in a tough spot near the ground. 10 seconds isn't just a long time, it's an eternity you absolutely do not have. This is why you always have to be thinking ahead.
All right, let's climb up to where jets belong, way up in the flight levels. Up here, the air is thin, the speeds are wild, and the physics of flight can lead pilots into a really dangerous spot that has a pretty grim name, the coffin corner.
Now to get this, we have to talk about something called Mach number. It's really simple. It's just how fast you're going compared to the speed of sound. But here's the crucial part. The speed of sound isn't some fixed number. As you climb higher and the air gets colder, the speed of sound actually gets slower. And that leads to this totally weird counterintuitive fact of high-altitude flying. Even though your plane is going incredibly fast through the air, your maximum indicated airspeed, the one pilots see on their gauges, actually starts going down as you climb higher. And it's because up there, in that thin, cold air, two completely opposite dangers start creeping closer and closer to each other, squeezing the margin for error down to almost nothing. And this is the coffin corner. On one side, if you fly too slow, the wings will stall and you'll get a low-speed buffet or shake. But fly too fast and shock waves form on the wings, creating a high-speed Mach buffet. The scary part? At really high altitudes, those two speeds might only be a few knots apart. So, speed up a little, you're in trouble. Slow down a little, you're in the exact same trouble.
So you've survived the coffin corner, and now it's time to come back down to Earth. And this is where a jet pilot faces their next huge challenge. See, because they're designed to be so efficient and slippery, jets just do not want to slow down.
Just think about it. When you pull the power back to idle in a prop plane, those big propellers basically turn into giant speed brakes. They create tons of drag and slow you right down. But in a jet, there's no prop drag. In fact, even at idle, the engines are still creating a little bit of forward push. It's like trying to slow down a bar of soap in a bathtub.
This quote from the FAA's own handbook really says it all. Imagine you're a little low on final approach. In a prop plane, you just jam the power in and you get an instant blast of air over the wings, and you climb. In a jet, you push the power forward, you wait for the engines to spool up, and because there's no prop blast, you don't get that instant lift. You have to wait for the entire airplane to speed up. It's just too little, too late.
So what's the solution? How do you land this thing safely? It all comes down to a core principle of jet flying called the stabilized approach. Since you can't make big, last-second fixes, you have to be perfectly set up, on the right path, at the right speed, in the right configuration, long before you even see the runway.
And it's not a suggestion, it's a hard and fast rule. By the time you're 1,000 feet above the ground, a strict checklist has to be met. Your gear has to be down, landing flaps set, you have to be dead on the glide path, not high, not low. Your airspeed needs to be rock steady, right on the money, and your descent rate has to be constant. If just one of those things is off, the only safe option is to go around and try the whole thing again. There's just no room to improvise.
So as you can see, making the jump to a jet is so much more than just learning to handle more speed. It's about learning a fundamentally different way to manage the energy of an aircraft, from the moment you start the engines all the way back to the gate.
It's really about mastering a whole new set of skills. Managing that engine lag, navigating the razor's edge of the coffin corner, planning your descent when you're still 100 miles away, and flying that perfect, stable approach every single time.
So that brings us to the big question. After looking at all of this, what do you think is the one skill that truly defines a great jet pilot? Is it their reflexes, their steady hands? Nope, it's anticipation. A great jet pilot isn't flying the airplane where it is right now. They're flying the airplane where it's going to be in 10 minutes. It's like playing a constant game of chess against physics, and you always have to be thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead. And it's that mental leap, from reacting to the present to commanding the future, that is the real art of flying a jet.